doing?
Oh, we are
very
fine,
fine,
sir.
sir.
So good to see
All
your
right.
face again, sir.
Yeah, good to see you. Are you guys in Nigeria?
Yes, sir. We're in Nigeria.
For now.
For
For
now.
now. As well. Instagram people, hope you have gone to join. I'm going to shut down Instagram. I'm just reminding you. That's why I'm here. So go to YouTube, either my YouTube or the Winlos YouTube, and join this conversation. All right. So see you guys. My YouTube channel is Kingsley Okonkwo. It's very easy. All right. So see you guys later. All right. So uh so we're generally going to discuss again, the things we normally talk about. But before we go on,
Yeah.
your movie is doing amazingly well.
Yeah, Professor Dilly.
How many views does he have now?
2.4 million
Yeah.
views.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. That's phenomenal. I've downloaded it already, so I'll be able to watch it now.
Okay.
I've done
Okay.
I've downloaded it on my tab, so hopefully I thought I would be able to watch it before this event, but since we landed in America, there's been one thing or the other settling
Yeah.
in. We have a tour. We have a tour.
Yeah.
Yes, coming up, and it's gonna run all through August. So we're going to 10 cities.
Wow.
We're going to
Wow.
10 cities. So that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. So we're trying to
How's
put all
Pastor
the
Kenny?
logistics. She's fine. She's fine. She too has quite some deadlines to catch. She has a major program in September.
Yeah.
So and she has a book, Wow Man, that has to also come out during that time.
Yeah.
So she's buried in
Busy.
trying to finish. She's buried in trying to finish the book. So all that is going on. All that is going on.
And we are supposed to be in the US in August as well, too.
Yes, I heard now. That's what I'm saying for now. As I'm saying for now, America is America is opening up a lot, and
Yeah.
in fact, generally, I think more Nigerian ministers and artists and everything are exploring, exporting their gifts and talents too from time to time,
Yeah.
which helps a great deal. So the response has been great out here. I always tell people America is not big for nothing. There's some countries that are big for nothing. They are just big, but the substance is not great. But America is not like that. Are you guys there? You guys seem frozen or muted. Can you guys hear me? You are muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah. So
And
you
so I
can
was
hear us
saying
now,
that,
right?
yes, I can. I was saying that, America is not big for nothing, that if you bring your talent out here, you will feel the impact. You'll feel the impact. So I'm happy everybody's exporting their gifts and talent.
Yeah.
We had a great time in Canada in May. We did 7 cities in Canada in May, and it was amazing. It was very good.
I can imagine you guys traveling around Canada and now traveling around US. I can imagine the
US.
stress.
It's a lot. Canada was 20
The
flights.
sacrifice is massive.
Yes, we were on 20 flights in
Oh,
Canada, yes. From Nigeria
wow.
to all these cities, it was 20 flights because Canada is not as connected as America. America, you can usually get flights from almost anywhere to anywhere. But in Canada,
Yeah.
some cities, you have to come back to Toronto before you connect to where you were going. So when we went to a place like Halifax, we had to do Toronto to Halifax. And the next city was Regina. So we had to do Halifax back to Toronto to now do
Wow.
Regina, So it's a lot. If we wanted to do Halifax to Regina, it would have taken 24 hours or so because you have to do a long layover in different places before you reach Regina. So
Imagine.
Canada is really, really big. Before the weekend before the Canada tour, I did Lagos to Kenya to go and preach 5 hours. In Canada, I did Toronto to Vancouver 5 hours. So the same, the same amount of time for the same country. You know. So what have you guys been up to? I saw some of your programs that you did. I think was it one in Uniben now, or one of them that you did somewhere?
Yeah, we did Uniben, we did Sokoto.
Wow.
We did University of Abuja.
Wow. So there are still people in Sokoto.
I didn't know where the crowd came from. The crowd was massive in Sokoto. We were so surprised. The crowd was massive in Sokoto. University of Abuja, we had a week plan for the program, but they knew we were coming to Abuja for Ocholi's program.
Yes.
You know, so they just fixed the program in University of Abuja, and it was a massive meeting as well too.
Wow. Students are always hungry. I pray that more and more, in our own days, a lot of big ministers came to campus a lot, but I don't think it's the same thing now. I don't think it's happening as much now. So I definitely look forward to doing more things on campus myself. I think it's always a good point to invest. A lot of the great ministers of God today started from campus. So
that's true.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's get a bit into today's discussion. How do you know someone is for you? How do you know someone is for you?
Okay, I want to start talking.
Okay.
Okay, I want to start talking.
Yeah, I'm going to start talking.
Yes.
Okay, so how do you know someone is for you? Okay, first of all, I would say for you to know someone is for you, first of all, you need to know what kind of marriage do you really want. Because as counselors, we have been opportune to get to meet single people, meet people who come for counseling. By the time you ask them, what kind of marriage do you want? You'll be amazed that most of them don't really have a picture of what they really want.
True.
Because it starts from there. What do you really want? What do you really want, in your marriage? Some people tell you that they want a kingdom marriage, but there is nothing kingdom about the attitude that they have. Because your picture creates a posture. Your picture creates a positioning. Your picture creates an attitude or a pattern, a culture. Because if you say that this is the kind of business, it's the same thing with a company, a business. If this is the kind of business you want, then there is an attitude for the kind of business.
That's true.
So many persons, by the time you have clocked, these singles or clocked some persons, you realize that they don't actually know what they really want. They don't really have a picture of what they want, because your picture creates your mindset, your picture creates a pattern, your picture creates a proper positioning, and all of that. So the first thing I would say is have a picture. What do you really want? About what kind of marriage do you really want? If you go back to Genesis 24, you see something that happened between Abraham and his eldest servant. Abraham wanted a wife for his son. Abraham wanted a wife for his son Isaac, and then he sent his eldest servant. But something very significant happened there. Abraham knew that he should not take a wife from amongst the Canaanites. So in other words, he first of all knew the kind of marriage he wanted for his son. So that determined the negotiables and the non-negotiables. That determined what he would not consider, what he would accept and what he would not accept.
True.
So he first of all had a picture, he had an idea, even though he was dwelling amongst the Canaanites, but he knew that the wife for his son should not be chosen amongst where he was dwelling. So I say this every time, that proximity will never equate suitability.
That's true.
So just because people are around you doesn't mean that's the picture you should have about your marriage.
Or because you guys are in the same department, in church, because you guys have become friends, doesn't mean that they automatically become marriageable for you.
So not all friends are actually marriageable for you.
True.
So the first thing is have a picture. What do you really want as a person? You want a kingdom marriage. Are you sure? Or because your pastor preached about it? So that's what you really, really want as a person. So that's the first thing. Then The second is know God to know who has godliness.
That's true.
Mm.
Know
Mm.
God to know who has godliness. Yeah. So some people say, "Oh, I want a godly spouse." After they know
Everybody,
those things, like, okay, I want.
everybody says it now. Everybody says they want God-fearing spouse.
Sir?
I say everybody says they want God-fearing spouse. So.
Yes.
Yes.
It should be
Mhm.
Christian.
They should be Christian.
Maybe
Yeah.
after tall, dark, and handsome, then you know to it. It should be God
Yes.
fearing.
Yeah. So so know God to know who is godly. Because you can't tell me you want a godly spouse, but you don't know God. How do you want to know the person that has the fruits of the spirit
True.
when you don't even have the
Mhm.
spirit?
Yes.
So
Yes.
so know God to know who is godly. So so if you don't know God or you have not heard his voice, how do you want to know when he's directing you to the person? So I
Yeah.
would say know God. Know God to really know who this person should be. Spend your time as a single person really knowing God, having a relationship with God, building intimacy with God so you can spot a godly person. I share this story a lot when we go out to minister. There was a guy then, that was asking me out, back then. And this guy was like, oh, was looking for a Christian lady. I used to see the guy very close to my pastor then. You know how you feel like since he's close to your pastor, then he's
You
Christian. So
should be serious.
I found out from
Yeah.
my experience, yes. So I found out from my experience that just because person is close to the anointed doesn't mean he's anointed.
That's true.
Yes.
They are two different
Yes.
things.
Judas Iscariot was close to Jesus.
Yes.
Exactly.
So,
It was even a leader.
so yeah, he was even a leader. So, so I mean, this guy was asking me out and all of that. So we got talking. He used to see me off and everything. But I didn't know that the guy was a pure liar. Like this guy would lie about everything. Even when I told him, I said, I feel like you have a child. He said, no. He doesn't have a child. He denied it consistently for 3 to 4 months. All of that. And I also met somebody else apart from him. This guy was like, oh, he was even a leader in the church, and all of that. But this guy was asking me and he was sleeping around, And sometimes these things you don't really get to see, no physical evidence, even when you check WhatsApp. You don't really get to see chats, you may not be able to detect. But when you know God, there's a weakness in your spirit. You just know that something is not right with this person. And you just find yourself asking some questions, even though you don't have any physical proof. You didn't see anything, but you just find yourself asking questions because when you really connected to God, there's this weakness in your spirit.
True.
So when you know God, you can actually discern. Emotions don't really give a drastic decision about who to marry.
That's true.
What discernment does is thorough. So beyond emotions, why emotions is very necessary. Discernment helps you to really decide beyond how you really feel about the person. But it comes from a place of knowing God. So you must know God to know the fruits of godliness. So that's the second way to know how to really know this person you should marry. My husband.
Okay, then also let's talk about LD conflicts.
Yes.
One sign again to know who you should get married to. Do you guys have LD conflicts, or the conflicts you guys have are usually on LD? Is because we come from two different socialization processes. As a sociologist, I've come to realize that where 2 or 3 are gathered, there's definitely going to be conflict. So although a lot of people are usually scared, like conflict is a sign that we're not meant to be together. Conflict is not usually a sign that we're not meant to be together. It's just that 2 of you cannot just agree on similar things for now because you both grow from different socialization processes. For example, my wife, when I met my wife, she likes to eat on the dining table, while me, I like to eat on the floor. So that was a major conflict for us. So you just get to, my wife is the clean one, while me, I'm the dirty one. Till date, I still look for my stockings. My wife, when she drops something, that's when she finds it. So the truth is this, you now ask yourself, this conflict that we're usually having, is it an LD one? So when you guys, before you decide to choose the guy, you guys are always having conflict. Ask yourself, is he healthy? Is it a conflict that is pushing us to be better, not to be bitter? That we said that there's conflict in marriage, or in relationship, doesn't mean that if the guy slaps you, you now say, we need this kind of conflict because it's pushing us forward. No, we're not saying you should tolerate those kind of conflicts.
Yeah,
conflict that doesn't make sense, conflict that drains you, conflict that is not putting anything reasonable on the table should be avoided. It's a sign that you guys are not meant to be together. But if the conflict is pushing both of you forward, is making your finance better, You know, I remember when myself and my wife before we got married, okay, the ladies I had met, I realized that they were more interested in my little money that I had. You know, they want just to squander it. They want to blow the money for me. But when I met my wife, I realized that for every time we're conflicted about money, when she's quarreling with me that you spend too much, because she wants to save for me, because she's interested in our future.
Yes.
So she quarrels with me a lot. You spend too much. You give too much. What's wrong with you? Are you the only Christian? You know, is your life charity? Is your life an NGO? You know, so the conflict we have was making us better. You know, so I could save. You know, when she was about giving birth, that was when I could buy our first car. You know, so is the conflict healthy? Is the conflict promoting both of you? You know, that is a sign that this person is meant for you. If you find that kind of a person, I believe that you should get married to such a person.
Yeah, true. So, in other words, the presence of conflict doesn't mean the person is not right. You just
True.
need to be able to check what kind of conflict really.
Yeah.
You know, just because there are conflicts in the relationship. Me and my husband were really quarreled though. Yeah, when we were in a relationship. Yes, we had our misunderstandings, you know, that and all of that. But the misunderstanding didn't mean that, you know, we weren't meant for each other.
Yeah.
You know, just for us to check, like, okay, this thing, what's really the understanding for? What's the purpose of the misunderstanding?
True.
The misunderstanding have a purpose. What's the purpose? You know, and so the presence of conflict, presence of misunderstanding doesn't mean that the person is not for you. So conflict is not necessarily a red flag. It's the kind of conflict, you know, that's there. So, and then the fourth thing is know your values.
True.
Yeah,
True.
have values, you know. If you don't have standard for yourself and you don't live the standard, you won't really know who stands out for you, really.
That's true.
You know, so you need to know your values. You know, can two work together except they agree? You know, should you be unequally yoked, you know, with an unbeliever? The unbeliever may not necessarily be someone who is not Christian. You can meet somebody that's Christian, but your values
But doesn't believe. Yes.
True.
Doesn't believe what you believe.
Yes, sir. So yeah, don't believe what you believe.
Yeah.
So when we talk about values, it's not necessarily just the lifestyle, what you are going to do as a person, you know, where you're going to, where you're headed to. You know, one of the striking things for me when I met my husband, even though he was my friend then, was what really made me really, you know, connect with him. Was just asking me, Emily, what do you want to become? Where are you going to? You know, he would support, he would encourage, he would give me ideas, you know, all of that. And he wasn't doing it out of an ingenuous state, because there are scammers, they're counterfeits, they can, you know, okay, it's not where you're going to, it's not I will form, I'll film it until I get her. You know, so he was being very honest to support, you know, will be there, will be out there. Somebody might even be asking, how do you know? That's why you need God to know. So, you know, so he'll be there with support, he'll do research with me and all of that. He was there. So he was interested in where I was going, he was interested in my vision. Then our values synced. I wasn't coming to meet him to negotiate premarital sex.
Yeah, true.
To say these are the boundaries. You know, I tell people, have a standard before you meet the person.
Yeah.
So that you can know. So you're not getting to you're not meeting the person and you're not trying to negotiate values. Values are not negotiated, they are only demonstrated, you know.
And so that you should not be asking questions in church. The pastor, he said he wants to sleep with me. What should I do? So you should know. I mean, somebody tells you, for me to marry you, you know, you have to test. What are you testing? You know, that kind of thing. You need to carry my child first. I need to check if you are fertile.
Yes.
You know.
You know, so you just know that this is a no-go area.
So what is your own value?
Yes, what's your own value?
You know, what do you believe about premarital sex?
Exactly.
We are not going to be the one that will define that for you.
Yes.
It has to do with your own relationship with God.
Yes.
And it's going to be foolishness for you to want to start a relationship. And they ask you, the guy said, let us carry our baby first. And you say, Pastor Kingsley Okonkwo said that we shouldn't carry. It's not Pastor Kingsley Okonkwo. It's not going to be staying with marriage. You know, it's not your value. You know, what do you know about God? What have you defined as your standard? You know, so it's very important. You know, what do you know about sex? What have you studied from the books you have been reading concerning marriage from Pastor Kingsley Okonkwo? What values have you created for yourself?
Sure.
You know, so you don't start a relationship by quoting people. You start a relationship by understanding what they have been teaching.
Yeah.
You know, it's very important. Then create your own value. It's very important.
True. So it's very, very important. So you need to know You know, because you cannot really know who you are going to be yoked to it if you don't even know what you have inside. So you know what you have, you know. So you need to. It's very important for you to know where you are going. Know your values, what you believe in.
Yeah.
So what do you believe in as a person? Then when you find the person, you just know that you guys sync. You know, for me and my husband, it was not difficult. You know, I just knew, it was very clear. You know, so the reason why people are confused is because you don't even know your values. You don't know what you believe in.
True.
You don't know. So that's what you believe in. You talk here, you talk there. You don't really know what you really believe in. You don't also have a standard. Anything goes for you, man and man.
That's true.
Man and man, woman and woman. Anything goes for you. And people of standard, anything shouldn't go. You choose exceptionals. You don't choose randoms.
That's true.
You know, so it's very important for you to know. When you don't know your standard, you can just go for anybody, any lady, any guy. But when you have standards, you know, so I just tell people, don't just choose someone who is rich in pocket. Choose someone who's rich in values.
Yeah.
You know, because somebody can be rich in pocket but not sensible with values.
Yeah.
And so you miss it there. You choose wrongly. You know, so it's very important. So you need to know your values. Then also, know who you are. Like, have an idea of your vision. Have an idea of your vision, where you are going to, your purpose in life. You know, and don't just be theoretical about it. Be practical. You know, because some people like to just speak theory. You know, what's your purpose? Say, I want to be the governor of Lagos State. Nothing political, no testing, no research, no, you know. So you just speak theory. There's no rehearsals to it. No practice to where you're actually going to. I cannot relate with what you're saying and what you're actually practicing.
That's
so
true.
You know, so it's good to have an idea of who you are as a person. You know, for me, I didn't know whether I was going to marry a pastor. That's the truth. But I usually have dreams that I was going to, have a women's ministry. I'll see myself in dreams. You know, I'll just have an idea that I feel like there's this ministry thing about me. But I didn't want to marry a pastor. Like, I say, no. You might say that pastors' wives, they suffer. So I never wanted to marry a pastor at all. I didn't want to be a pastor's wife. I didn't want all those public attention, you know. I didn't want all those one that, you know, everybody, they're just within your space, disturbing you, counseling, everything. So, but even though I had an idea, I didn't just want to marry a pastor, you know. But I had most important, I had an idea of where I was going. So
That's
some
true.
things were not surprising to me. So because I already had an idea of where I was going to, I wasn't also looking for a pastor to marry. You know, I was looking for someone that had a sense of godliness. I was looking for someone that had fear of God, and someone who was going to support my ministry. You know, at least little things I was already doing, someone was going to support it. So once you know who you are, it's easy to know who the person should be.
That's
You need to know who the person should be. Once you know who the person is, you need to know who the person should be. But when you don't know who the person, you can't even tell who is suitable for you, who is fit for you. You know, but once you know who you are, you have an idea, you have a spec. Because none of us really know the end of our road. The more you walk with God, the more depths, the more things you see about yourself, the more expressions you see about you. You know, but when you have an idea of who you are, you have an idea of who you are. It's easier to identify with who the person should be, who the person you're going to marry should be. Yeah. So purpose makes you know the partner. You know.
Yeah, and I notice also that a lot of people, when they want to get married, especially amongst us that are Christians or believers, even especially in the Pentecostal right now, you know, when we want to choose our spouse, best one to get married to, we usually make that mistakes of trying to get somebody not within our tribe, Christian tribe. You know, for example, we have dealt with cases where a Jehovah's Witness wants to get married to a Pentecostal, a Jesus Christ Latter-day Saint wants to get married to a Redeemed. We all have different tribes within the Christian fold. You know, so we usually advise that if you really want to get married, it is good that you get married with somebody that is within your tribe or very, very close to your tribe, so that you don't have issues.
Yeah, doctrinal issues.
You know,
so faith compatibility is very key.
Yeah, faith compatibility is very, very key. You know, many times as believers, we usually underrate or overlook such a thing.
Yeah.
You know, and issues like this causes a lot of problems in marriage.
Yeah.
You know, there was one case that we dealt with as well too. The guy was Christ Embassy and the lady was Catholic. you know, and we got married. And that basically was the issue that they were having, you know.
Yeah, true.
You know? So the guy believed in 8 a.m. mass. The lady said speaking in tongues. You know, why the lady speaking in tongues? The guy said, no, this your prayer is too much. You know, we don't do like that. Where's the devil that you're fighting?
Yeah.
So they fought that to the point that for 1 year when they got married, they were not attending church, both of them, you know, because they didn't know the church to attend. You know, then when they gave birth to their child, that was now the icebreaker, you know. Now the guy said, it's going to be my church, we are going to dedicate this child.
Yeah.
This one says it's going to be my church. And they just splitted.
True.
They just splitted. So it's important that you need to check this aspect as it may look so insignificant, but sometimes
it's very sensitive.
So even if it's going to be within the same Pentecostal fold, inside Pentecostal as well too, we have
different belief system. That's the truth.
You know, so it's very
Mountain of fire. Mountain of fire cannot marry house on the rock.
You know, so we are not bad churches per se. It's just that we share different values.
True.
You know, and it's like that's why we're called the body of Christ. You know, some are the head, some are the hands, some are the chest, some are the intestine. So we are not we are not all the same. So it's very important. So be sure that it is head and head that is marrying, or kidney and kidney that is marrying. Otherwise, you're going to have issues.
So the case we handled, they came from two different churches. So the guy, the lady said, imagine they were even cutting for 7 years, a relationship for 7 years. And was close to when they had fixed date. 7 years old. That fixed date when the girl was telling me that the guy's church, they don't eat fish. You know, the guys church don't eat fish.
And they don't meet on Sundays.
They don't meet on
Saturdays.
They don't eat fish and all of that. I'm like, okay.
And she likes Sunday's church.
She was now confused after 7 years. So in my mind, I'm like, what have you been doing in the relationship for 7 years? So this is like 7 years anniversary. So what have you been doing all this while? So you see, faith issues, and they're married, but they're having issues. I don't even know that the marriage is still there, you know. I love that. So, but my point is, these are the things people don't ask, you don't find out. So just because, you know, we come from the same Pentecostal church,
so that we are Christians,
doesn't
mean that we share the same values.
So it's very important to ask.
So it's good you ask those questions. You know, your church, you believe in Trinity or you believe in one entity. You know, so let us know. Do they speak in tongues in your church, or they don't speak in tongues? So that you know what you are choosing or what you are entering into. You know, so it's very important so you don't have those kind of doctrinal issues. You believe in prayers, you don't believe in prayers, you believe in walk, don't believe in walk. Amen. You know, there are some lately now to tell you that grace has covered for everything. You can sing. You know, God has forgiven your past, present, and future. You marry that kind of a guy, the day he starts cheating on you, tell you that grace has covered for it. You know, so ask questions. You know, what kind of grace that is covering for this thing? Let us know now.
One guy, he was having that. I said I should not worry that God has covered. And by the way, we'll be married in heaven. There's already revelation. And he was cheating on me. So can you imagine? Yes, that's what I told you. So I'm like, so everybody have their what they believe in. So
there's complexity currently within the Christian field. So it is important that you get married to the person that you both align with. I mean, there's really complexity. There are some, they don't do Sunday churches anymore. There's Friday church, there's Saturday church, there's Wednesday church now. So ask.
Just need to know what you want.
Is it something that you want to go into? Do you like Wednesday churches or everyone online churches now? So just ask the one you are.
And also in line with church and like, you know, in what was I going to say? Oh my God, I forgot it. In line with church, yes. There are people that tell you that they are Christians and they do online. They don't go to physical church. You have to find out. You have to ask. Because somebody can tell you that, oh, I don't want to go to church. I don't like. I met those kind of people too. You know, I don't want to go to. I just do online. Or they don't have any church they are rooted in. They're not planted in any church, you know. Let's say I'm Christian, I read my Bible. My brother, you need corporate gathering, right? And, you know, the lady, they also need corporate, you know, gathering of believers. So you need to ask all these questions. Are you going to cope with that, you know? So don't just create assumption. Assumption is no intelligence, it's no knowledge. You need to ask detailed questions to really know what you're going to marry, you know, so you know what you're going to get into. And all these things help you to spot out who you should really get married to. So you need to find out something. I need to observe, you know. is it something you can deal with? Are you going to just sit down, drinking, or maybe you can drink water and you're doing online every time? Because some people believe in that. One of my proteges was telling me that recently, I think, no, sorry, a few months ago, she was saying that there was a guy she met. The guy relocated to her city. And she was like, okay, what church are you in? Like, he's Christian, that's what is important. And I was like, what church? It was like he follows online. Online, and it can be online. It can be in 3 different churches online. You're here. You can do 20 minutes here, 20 is checking out. So what church are you? So you need to find out all of these things. It's very important. We're not saying doing church online is bad or it's not bad. That's not the point. But can you deal with it? Can you marry someone who is into all that? It's very, very important. Then also know the person's work, the job. Of the person. Know the person's work. Every work has its expectation. So know the person's work, what the person does. There are people who cannot marry medical doctors, they can't marry gynecologists. Same thing for women be calling, all of that. So every job has the expectation. You can't marry Paul, you can't marry pastor, and it's fine. So you need
you can't marry a lazy man.
You can't marry that's another that one is not that
one. Yahoo boy.
Know the job, because some people tell you I'm working. Where are they working? I'm making
fruit. Even if the person is not making money,
you should know. You know the job. What job? Because some people are Yahoo, and they are making money, are giving you. But what job? What are you really doing? I want to know. What are you doing? What kind of business are you indulging in? What kind of business? Why you don't want to marry a lazy man? Marry someone that's working. Don't just marry someone who just has faith but no work.
That's true.
And not just work with mouth. Some people have theoretical job. Their job is in their mouths. So don't
marry somebody that's always saying by the grace of God, by the grace of God, by the grace of God. Let the person show you fruit. We are going somewhere by the grace of God.
From some of these things you're sharing, what you're trying to say, and what we're trying to say is that it's possible to make the right choice. It's possible to make a good choice. Because what I see a lot of people do is to have the perspective or the attitude that there's no good choices out there. There's no good man, no good woman. They have the ideology that if they've gone through heartbreak after heartbreak, that is always the other person's fault. Meanwhile, they are the ones choosing this kind of people consistently. They are the ones attracting this kind of people. Because for almost all scenarios of divorce, almost all, you will see that there were some warnings, there were some red flags, there were some negligence, there was some closing eyes to glaring facts. There was some, misapplication of understanding, lack of wisdom. From everything you are saying, these are all individual mistakes. Sometimes some people make more than one of these, mistakes people are making before they go into relationships. And now it now fails. And you now start hearing comments that have given up on love. There's no love in this Nigeria, or you can never find true love. All those things are not true. I believe people are making the mistakes, at these stages we are discussing today. This is where they're making the mistakes. And we all know, and I believe totally, that the most important step to having a good marriage is who you decide to marry. That's the most important step. People don't know that. The most important step to having a good marriage is the person you choose to marry. All right? Just like I only mentioned about kingdom marriage. If you are trying to build a kingdom marriage, then you have to marry a kingdom spouse. That's how it works. You do not go and marry a worldly man or a worldly woman and you want to build a kingdom marriage. It's not going to work. It's the kind of person you choose that will determine the kind of thing you will have. You can't marry anyone and also choose any outcome. No, the person you choose automatically affects the outcome of the marriage. If you want a godly and a kingdom home, a godly and a kingdom marriage, then the principle is that you have to marry a godly and a kingdom man, a godly and a kingdom woman. There's no magic to it, because too many people ignore the clear warning signs. I don't know why people do that. I don't know why people do that. You see a guy now that his life is not built on the word of God. You see a girl now, her life is not built on the word of God. Her life is built on what her friends are saying, what the economy is saying. These are people that, are regular in a nightclub, regular alcoholics. They are building, they have a lifestyle that they are building and they have built. You cannot
Yeah.
marry this person and want to turn them into a pastor. It doesn't work like that. You want
So
to turn them
true.
into a man of God or a woman of God. It doesn't work like
Yeah.
that. You have to be clear. Like I said at the beginning, you have to be clear what kind of marriage you want to build. What kind of marriage you want to build. And looking at some of the other steps you have mentioned, I've, like your perspective of marriage and all that. I want to pinpoint one of them. The basic one. One of them is the willingness of that person to actually build that kind of marriage you want. The person has to be
That's true.
interested in. One person can't build a
That's
marriage.
that's
I see
true.
some people. They have a big dream of the marriage they want, but they are trying to impose it on somebody that is not on that same
But
page.
exactly,
Yeah.
yes. So there's no
He's not on
syncing.
that
Yeah.
page. He's not seeing it. He's not. You're talking about ministry. They are not on that same page at all. They don't even know what you're talking about. All
True.
they are thinking about is a big bed. You are thinking of a big ministry, big church. You're thinking of a big bed where they will sleep with you. That's all they are thinking about. You know? So the willingness. I counsel people every day, and I see one person thinking that if I love this person enough, this marriage will work. No, one person cannot build a marriage. The other person too
That's true.
has to be willing to build the same thing they are willing to build. It takes two willing people to build
People.
that marriage of your dreams. I've seen people say,
That's
"Oh,
true.
Pastor, I like this guy so much, but he doesn't like me," or "I like this girl so much, but she doesn't like me." And I thought by asking that question, the question itself has the answer inside. But instead, you will hear
Yeah.
things like, "So what should I do?" And I will tell them, "You are focusing on the wrong thing."
The
The
wrong
issue is not
thing.
to
Yeah.
That's
get
true.
them to commit to you. The issue is to know that they've already shown you that they are not on the
Yeah.
same page with you.
Yeah.
That's
If
true.
you
True.
force them, marriage is such a long journey. If they
That's
enter
true.
without being 100% committed, they are going to back down along the line. They are going to be distracted along the line. They are going to give up along the line. So you're focusing on the wrong thing. The issue is not to convince them. The issue is to discern, like Anwule said, discern them, not convince them.
Yes.
In the YouTube video I and Pastor Mildred did on the things we agreed about before we married. One of the things we agreed about was that if at any point you feel this is not the marriage or relationship you should be in, we'll end it before we get married. That even if it's on
That's
the
true.
wedding day, if it's on the altar, you get to a state where you are just not sure. You just don't feel we should go ahead and get married. I said, let's be willing to end it. And both of us agreed. You see, that is the kind of healthy agreements,
That's
healthy
true.
mindset you must have. Don't have a do or die mindset. Too many people have a do or die mindset. They have found somebody, the person is not willing, not compatible, not in alignment, but they just want to marry. So they have made up their minds, they're going to marry this person no matter what happens. They've made up their mind.
That's
So all the signs are there, all the warning signs are there, the red flags are there, but they don't care. They've already chosen this
Yeah.
person, and no matter what, I'm going to marry them, no matter what. And I'm saying no. You must be healthy enough to say, look, if you don't want to come on this journey, it's okay. It's better.
that's
Broken
true.
relationship is better than a broken marriage. It's better for us now
Yeah.
to break it. But I see people that they've made up their minds. They're not even waiting. They don't care whether the relationship is working. They just want to get to the
Yeah.
marriage. And the sad thing is that once you get to that marriage, your eye will just clear. You will
Yeah.
now be
True.
faced with the reality of your decision and the
Yeah.
consequence of
True.
that decision. And this is why people now come
Yeah.
back and say, "Oh no, this marriage is not working." This is not all the things people divorce for were usually present before the marriage.
Yes.
Somebody just
True.
somebody just thought they could manage it, they could change their partner, they could cope
Yeah.
with it.
That's the
Then
times.
10 years down the line, 15 years down the
Yeah.
line, they are saying, "Oh, I can't cope with it." But you saw these things. So
True. Yeah.
it's
True.
something. Before you guys respond to that, please, for all those watching, we are live in the United States all the month of August. We're on our tour, United States tour, 10 cities in America this August: Chicago, Atlanta, Ohio, Maryland, New York, LA, Houston, Dallas, Boston, Maryland, 10 cities in the United States. So please look for the city
Beautiful.
closest to you. Get your tickets and show up. I don't think I'll do this kind of tour again in my life. So trust me,
That's okay. That's
if
okay.
you
Ah,
because it's
very
so
exhausting.
hectic.
Before you think about
Yeah.
the jet lag and all that.
Oh,
Oh.
In Canada, we were like robots at some point because we didn't even know where we were, what time it was. Because Canada has so many different time zones. So we're just operating like robots. They just tell us it's time for your flight. We'll just stand up. I mean, we didn't even know where we were. So it's like that. So please come out, come out. Don't say, oh, you're not coming to my exact city. No, I cannot come to every street. So you look for the place closest to you. Fly there, drive there. In Canada, there are people that drove for 12 hours to come. There are people that drove for 10 hours. There are people that flew from another city. There are people that even flew from America to attend the Canada one. So no excuses. Tell your friends, tell your relatives. Everybody should show up. All right, you guys should respond a bit to what we've said so far.
Okay, I think Pastor K, I think we should add to this, especially concerning the tour you are running as well. So how to know if you should marry him or her? Is the person teachable? Is the person ready to learn? Does the person submit to authority? Does the person have mentors? Who does the person listen to?
Very important.
You know, it's very, very important. You know, because when we have trainings like this that you're organizing in the US, how willing is the person to want to learn? The person is not acting this thing up. Is this person willing to learn? You know, I think Pastor K, I've told you this thing privately, that before I got married, I was introduced to your sermons 2002. No, 2002, University of Ilorin. You know, one of your members in David Christian Center was the one that was giving me your sermons. You know, so I started listening to your sermons there. Even how you married PM, how you got married to, how you told her that should we do a big wedding or you want me to buy you a car? So I asked at 2002. You know, so I've been saying your sermons, I've been listening to your sermons, and I had over 5 gig of your sermons those days. God told me, said the thing crap. You know, so the point is this: is the person teachable? It's not for you to say, "Oh, Winlos are by your marriage." Who do they listen to? Or who does the person listen to?
True.
You know, no man is an island of his own.
True.
You know, so I'm saying this to tell you that the Winlos are not just independent people. They came from somewhere. They listen to people.
True.
They are mentors. You know, who's your mentor?
True.
And your mentor is not somebody that I just admire on Facebook. It's the person whose instruction or in book. It's the person whose instruction you want to follow. So it's not enough for you to be shouting, "Amen, right on, sir, right on, sir," and you are riding on your own. You know, you must be able to ride on the person's instruction. You know, so are you willing to spend to learn? You know, you need to pay for information. You know, it's very, very important. A lot of people, they want things free.
True.
You know, so these are the sacrifices you must pay because you want a good home.
True.
So it's very important.
Auntie really saved my husband. Honestly, the sermon saved him because we're looking for front and back, up and down. He lived that has front and back. Front and back did not make him serious, but God just asked him.
God have mercy on him.
You know, so if you want to align into purpose, then you must always follow purposeful teachings.
Sure.
Yeah, you must follow. You must follow mentors who share purposeful teachings, and you must be able to sacrifice. It's very important, you know. So where are you investing your time in and all that?
Yeah, it's true.
Or you meet a guy as well too, and the guy is trying to tell you that I don't listen to anybody. You know, I'm on my own.
That's very true.
Myself. God speaks to me. God speaks to me directly. You're in danger.
Yeah, true. Someone that is not teachable can teach you selflessly. That's the truth.
That's true. You know, you're in danger. He doesn't talk to anybody. Doesn't take advice from anybody. True. He believes that he knows more than everybody. You know, you tell him about his local.
What does he know?
What does he know? You tell him about this one. I beg you, walk past that rim. You're in trouble. You will not be able to talk to him, and nobody will be able to talk to him for you.
True.
So it's very important. So just check that. It's very important.
True.
That's powerful, you know, because you talking about teaching is crucial, because without teaching, what happens is that you are left to only your feelings. All right.
That's true.
Without teaching, you are left to only your feelings, and many people think they can trust their feelings. You cannot trust your feelings. You cannot trust your feelings. All right. Your emotions were never created to guide you. Never created to guide you. So I think the average young person needs to know that. So this is why, you know, somebody thinks, "Oh, I'm already in love with this person. There's nothing I can do about it." That's what I discovered. A lot of people fall in love before they even check whether this person is the kind of person I say marry. So they just say, "Oh, I'm already in love. Let me find how to make this work at all costs. Let's just make this work." No, you don't have to be struggling to make this work. You have to make sure this is the kind of person I want to spend my life with. So don't trust your emotions. Trust the principles. Trust the things we are teaching you now. All right. For instance, somebody that has never married before might really think that front and back is what will keep them happy. They might genuinely, yes, it's true. They might genuinely think so. They might think,
It's
I
true.
won't be
It's
happy.
true.
But they don't
It's
realize
true.
that at the end of the day,
Or if I give good sex, the marriage will work.
Yes, true.
work.
And marriage is
Yes,
all about sex.
is at all. So because they've not married before, they don't know. They just think, this is what I'll bring to the table. This is what I will use to. But marriage is such a long journey. I always tell people getting along is more important than getting aroused. All right, getting
Yeah.
along is more important than getting aroused. As important as sex is, it's not the only thing that will make the marriage work. If this person is so
That's true.
annoying, it will get to a stage you won't even be sexually attracted to the person at
That's
all.
true.
You know.
Yes, true.
So these things are so powerful, so powerful. Don't trust your emotions, all right? Learn the real principles and have enough sense, enough patience, enough strength by God's Spirit to wait it out, to make sure you don't compromise your standards. Anybody making you
Yeah.
compromise is a telltale sign that there's problem. Anybody making you compromise your stand. What marriage should be, say two should be better than one. This person should be
That's true.
making every aspect of my life better. That's how you know it's easy. You should be making every aspect of my life better. If they are pulling me back spiritually, then that is all you need to know, that this is not what I want. If they are pulling you
Yeah.
back financially, just like Oyi's mentioned, that some of the ladies before were more interested in squandering the money, but you and
Yeah.
Oli was more interested in saving the money. So that's how you know. That's how you know if the person is pulling you back financially, pulling you back spiritually, pulling you back in any area of your life. You know that this can't be the thing, because the whole design of marriage is two should be better than one. There have been people I've
Yeah.
counseled that the two of them came together. Two of them are my church members. So they came and they want to marry. I said, don't marry yourselves. So two of you, if you be worse than one, don't join at all. Go and look for two of you look for somebody better, because two of them were at a horrible place. They were not just
Yeah.
where they should be at all, mentally, spiritually, or physically, and they don't want to join each other. Which kind of children are you guys going to have? What kind of family are you guys going to? I said, no, 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 no. I discouraged them. I left. I don't know whether they eventually married, but those days I was more blunt with how I say truth. Nowadays, I'm a bit more, I'm calmer. But that time, I will say my mind though, without thinking too time. I will tell you, if it's now, I'll just look for the cute way to be saying it. That time, I didn't have time for that nonsense. So I will just tell you that don't marry yourselves. And the interesting thing is that for most of those people that I told the truth, even though many of them did not receive it, but most of those things, either the relationship ended or they got married and the marriage too ended. Many of those cases, because the signs were clear. The signs were clear. There was one of my right-hand men like that he wanted to get married. And I don't know what I was doing with his phone, and I stumbled on something this girl he wanted to marry sent to him. Now, the girl too was my church member. Fine, nice girl, church member, he too church member. But I stumbled on the message the girl sent. When I read the message, and I can't remember what the message was, but I knew that message showed where she was spiritually, that she was not spiritually grounded. So I pointed the guy out. I said, you can't marry this girl. Don't marry this girl. He didn't agree. He defended it. We had discussions almost every day for 2 weeks. I was trying to convince. I even had to call witnesses, people to come and join the discussion. That come and hear, see what I'm telling this guy. He didn't agree. In fact, it was so bad that he went ahead and married behind my back. And this is somebody that's very, very close to me. My right-hand man in church, one of my major people. He went to marry with behind my back. I said, I didn't even know he had gotten married. He didn't invite me. In fact, his parents were even asking him during the wedding that, where's Pastor K? He made the excuse for me that I traveled or something. I found out that he was married 2 months or so after. That's when I found out. So, but by 9 months or less than a year, the girl traveled abroad for something, she was living abroad, she traveled abroad, and she sent him a message that she can no longer continue the relationship. She called the marriage relationship. She called the relationship. I said, these are some of the things I saw. I saw that she wasn't ready. She didn't know what she was getting into. I saw it.
True.
They later also found out that she was even pregnant for somebody, abroad then when she was married to this one here in Nigeria. I said that what I was telling you, that you should not marry this girl. That's what I was trying to tell you. So, some people just fall in love and they're not seeing. The signs are always there. The signs are always
Yeah.
there. Watch out. All right. And I tell women all the time, because you guys brought that up, I'll mention it. I tell women all the time, please, third parties are very important in a relationship. It's just that you should look for the right third party. All right. Don't just look for family members or your friends that don't know about relationship. A pastor figure, a mentor figure, very necessary, because you guys have never married
Very
before.
important.
You are entering something you do not know. It's like somebody traveling abroad for the first time and he doesn't know anybody abroad. Nobody has told him anything abroad. He's going to suffer for a few months. He needs those small preparation of, oh, this is how much to take, oh, this is how you do this thing, oh, things like that will prepare the person, for the journey, for the thing that needs to be done. Are you guys still there though? I can't see you. Your video is off.
Yeah.
All right. So your video is off though. Hope you know. Check your camera. If not your camera is off. So having that relevant third party is a crucial part, because that person can bring wisdom. Yes, you're back.
Yeah.
That person can bring wisdom, can bring guidance. One of the first things I did with PM once we started a relationship was to take out my mentors. I said, these are my mentors. Feel free to call them at any time. If you can't reach me, if I'm doing anything out of order, these are my mentors. Reverend Sam Ademi, Reverend Victor Ademi, Reverend Alba Dodo. I said, talk to them at any time.
Yeah.
Collect their numbers. Because don't marry a man that is not submitted. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm reportable. Yes. Don't marry a man that is not submitted to authority.
That's true.
Don't marry a man that doesn't, because the whole idea of marriage is, as a woman, you're going to be submitted in that home to that man. That man is the driver
That's
of that vehicle.
That's
So
true.
yes, we need to know that he's also under control. We need to know that he's under, some mentoring. So he has accountability. All right. You don't want to marry a man that has no accountability. It's just too dangerous.
True. A leader should be led so that he can lead you well. So if he's
Yes.
not how to somebody, I don't even understand what submission is, first of all.
Yes.
I'm
always scared.
And I think this generation, we are kind of very rebellious. So we want to do life our own way.
We don't want to be controlled.
We don't want to be controlled, or we don't want to be checked. But the truth is that these things can really help you. Like when I was asking my wife out, the moment I told her I was going to get married to her, she called her pastor and she reported me to her pastor.
Yes.
Yes. And some people say, that is old school now. Why would you go and tell an authority? We are bigger than that and all those stuff. Now, just imagine if I was fake. Now that she has involved a third party, a pastor. Now that she has involved a pastor, the truth is that I will run away from the relationship if I was fake.
True.
So what kept me going with her is because I was genuine.
True.
So it is important. Who are you talking to? You really need to get a mentor.
Yeah, who is leading you?
True.
Yeah, very important. Because if a person doesn't lead you, the person is not led. The person cannot lead you.
That's true.
That's why some men don't understand what submission actually is about. Yeah, so they're just like, they just say different things, they have their different minds about submission. But the truth is, if the man is submitting to someone, the man will have an understanding of what submission is. When you are connected to someone, a leader who has gone ahead, the person guards your understanding. The person puts a check on you and all of that. But when you're not led by anyone, you don't really know how to really lead people. That's the truth. So it's very important to. That one is very important to. In fact, flee. Don't just flee from sexual appearances. Flee from anyone that's not accountable, that's not submitted to someone.
Yeah.
Flee, run very fast for your life. If not, you're going to.
Sorry, you're muted. Go ahead. Sorry, I stepped out for a second.
So don't just flee from sexual appearances. Flee from anyone who is not submitted to anyone.
Yeah.
That's not. Flee for your life, because your life is in danger. That's the truth.
That's
life
true.
is in serious danger.
That's true.
All right. Thank you. This was good. I've had to deal with so many people that make marriage look like they force them into it. Like, it's so unsure. This marriage thing, You can't be sure how it's going to go. But if you do things right, you can be sure. You
True.
can have predictable results if you
Yeah,
follow some of the things we've shared today. You can
that's
have
true.
predictable results. I watched one popular American here that teaches on marriage and everything. She just left a 14 years marriage, and she was
Wow.
saying, oh, it took her 14 years to know that the man is not willing to love her the way she wants to be loved and all that. And people were saying, oh, maybe she didn't communicate her needs well to the man. I say it has nothing to do with that. It
Mm.
can't take you 14 years to know. That means this
Mm.
person has been this way for 14 years. You are the one
Mm.
hoping to
True.
change him. He has
Yes, yes.
told you who he is and where he's going, what he's going to do.
Right
But
from
but
time.
most times people just feel I can push this thing, I can make it work by
Emotional.
all means.
Yeah.
No. When people show you who they are, believe them. Believe
Mm.
them. Don't try to push them. Before you start, you can know what kind of person this person is, especially if you follow, if you are healthy. Again, that's another issue. Some people are not even healthy, so they are desperate. And you see, once you are desperate, the chances you make the right decision is slim to none. A desperate person usually is not in the frame of mind to make the
Mm.
best decisions. All right. So you can't jump into something and say after 20 years, I now found out. No, no. These signs usually would have been there. This person would have been showing you these signs, but you
That's
you
true.
refused to see it. You wanted to cover it. You called it something else,
True,
and
yeah.
mhm.
So most times, many of the things, issues in marriage actually has a root.
Mm.
Because
Yeah,
no fruit just bears, no tree just
by
bears
itself.
fruit without a root. So if you check and Clackberry, realize that it's actually said
Even even
in
even
their
before,
singlehood.
yeah,
Yes, before they got married.
even before they got married, it
Yeah, so they
started
were
from there.
managing, like you said, Pastor
Yeah,
K. And people like to casualize weaknesses.
that's
And they end
true.
Mhm.
up becoming casualties in marriage. They just
Yeah,
casualize it, like, oh, and make excuses for it. Oh, it's because of this, and then by the time you get to marriage, you're like seeing it. You're like, I did not know you knew. It's not because
yes,
you
Or,
saw
or,
it.
or, 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 or
Mm.
maybe you realize that your friend got married to a criminal, and
Oh,
a year after the person changed. That you now take that as a rule.
yes.
So an
mm,
exception cannot be a rule.
Mm-hmm.
yes,
When in a meeting where the lady raised up her hand to boldly say that she got married to a kidnapper, and then 6 months, 6 years after, the man became an area pastor in Redeemed Christian Church of God. Is our God not good? I told her, I said, I told her, I said, that is an exception. That is not a rule.
Yes.
You
yes,
can't use that to teach people. To,
Mm.
yes,
it's an exception. If you follow that route, that kidnapper will kill you.
True,
yes,
true,
You will be the one that will not come out alive from that. So you don't use
true,
exceptions as rules.
true, true.
exactly.
It's very important.
Yeah. And some people say, he was not like this, or he was like that, but he had become worse. He didn't become worse. The truth is, the things you saw before you got married just became magnified.
That's
When
true.
somebody is now closer to you, see clearly. Just like
Yes, you are
if you put a
seeing it.
microscope,
Yes,
yeah, on something, it becomes broader. The
Yeah.
thing was there. It didn't. The size did not change. It's just that you now became closer. That's what happens. So weaknesses
and
are more magnified in marriage.
yes, and again, your emotions are a bit now more settled because when you are
True.
Yes.
very excited, you
Yes,
don't
you
see
can't see
flaws.
so much. Yeah,
You
true.
don't see problem. You only see all the good things
Yeah,
about
true,
True.
it. But
true,
5 years, 6 years into marriage, your emotions are now down,
true.
and the reality, the
Mm.
practicality of that
Yes,
relationship is now in play. And you now find
true.
out, no, I can't marry a man that is abusing me, or I can't marry a man that is
Mm.
not supportive. But this guy was insulting you before, but you were
That's true.
blinded. This guy was not supportive before, but you were blinded. But
True,
now the reality is down, and you are now stuck.
true.
So thank you guys.
Thank you
This was
so
good.
much.
I
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, PK.
I
It was
enjoyed
amazing.
myself. Thank you for all those watching. Please don't forget we're in 10 cities in the United States, 10 whole cities. Look for the one closest to you: Chicago, Atlanta, Ohio, New York, Boston, Maryland, Houston, Dallas, LA, Tulsa, Oklahoma. 10
Mm.
cities. Look for the one closest to you. Come out. Tell your friends, tell your family. Don't wait for it to be on your street. Look for the
Yeah.
closest one to you and show up. And thank you, Winlos. We're expecting you guys in the US. Hopefully,
Yes.
our paths will cross as we are touring around. If you are in any of the cities when we are holding, please make sure you show up.
No
Make sure
problem,
you
sir.
show up.
No problem, sir.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
All
so
right.
much, sir. We
Thank you so
Thank
appreciate
much.
it. Thank you for your
you.
time.
Thank you. All
We love
right.
you, Pastor M.
She will hear. I'm sure she'll hear. She'll hear. Thank you, guys. This was good. All right, everybody. Thank you guys for joining. That was the Winlows. Amazing folks. Amazing folks. We look forward to connecting more and more and more. All right, so we're done. I don't know how to save or share this thing, and I can't find Gideon. So,